Welcome and thank you for joining my session. My name is Bill Higbee. I'm with Product Marketing here at Twilio. This session is called Omnichannel Communications Performance Measurement and ROI. Now we're going to cover a lot pretty quickly here, so I'd imagine you might have some questions, and I'd really encourage you to ask those questions in the chat bar. You can see the question section on the right-hand side of your screen, and we have a team of people here who are ready to answer your questions on the fly. So let's dive in. At Twilio, we launched our 2024 State of Customer Engagement Report, and I found this quote within it really interesting. It said, with so many brands competing for consumer attention, personalizing communications on preferred channels ensures messages cut through the noise and reach the intended audience. And that makes perfect sense to all of us as consumers because every single one of us has a preferred channel. And of course, if you send a message to a channel that we don't check, well, then the business isn't going to get the value that they hope to receive out of it. But all of us, although it makes common sense, work in business, and we have to make business decisions. And so when we work on stuff like this, we actually have to prove the value of what we're doing. So what is the value of communicating on preferred channels? Those are the questions we're going to try to answer today. Now, I try to talk to a lot of customers, and I typically get asked two specific questions. The first one has to do with forecasting or business case justification. A customer will ask me, well, what's the expected outcome of sending all these communications? What can I anticipate to achieve? And this question typically comes up with the marketing use case. So I'm going to walk you through some examples of that here in a little bit. The other question I get is really challenging. People will ask me, well, what's the value of all these communications I send that do not generate revenue? Perfect example would be shipping notifications or flight delay notifications. And those are some of the examples I'm going to walk you through later as well. All right, so moving on to forecasting and business case justification, it actually isn't that difficult. There's 4 different components that you need to get. The first one is you need to estimate the volume that will be sent. Then you need to estimate the percentage of those that will actually take action. That's also known as a conversion. Then you need to determine the value of that action. And then you need to determine your costs and just work your math magic. Now, for estimating the volume that would be sent, what I typically recommend is trying to use some research to get some background on what you're trying to achieve. Now, at Twilio, we did a 2023 engagement report where we surveyed 4,800 consumers worldwide. And we found out something that we already knew, that email is still the #1 communication channel choice globally. But did you know that 95% of people will actually sign up for emails from businesses that they like? Or that 75% will specifically subscribe to marketing communications by email? And very importantly, 27% will subscribe to email for marketing, but not SMS. Now for SMS, the numbers are a little bit different. 89% will sign up, 61% will sign up for marketing communications by SMS, and 10% will subscribe to SMS for marketing communications, but not email. Now for WhatsApp, I don't have that granular of detail right now, but I always like to call out these two statistics. WhatsApp has 2.7 billion monthly active users, and 23% of WhatsApp users like to receive promotional offers. So of course, if you're already in APAC or in the UK or in Latin America, or you're considering going into those markets, I'm sure WhatsApp is right at the forefront of your list. Okay, so now you have some background statistics, and then you think, well, now, what percentage of all these people that sign up and get sent to communication, what percentage are actually going to convert or take action? And what I like to propose is that you use what's known as an effective conversion rate, okay? And this is a best practice. An effective conversion rate enables you to compare channel versus channel on an apples-to-apples fair comparison. And I'll just use these 2 examples at the bottom. The first one says the correct way. And all you do is you take your conversions and you divide it by the total number of people that you started with in a marketing campaign. In this example, 2,400 conversions divided by 1 million equals 0.24% effective conversion rate. The incorrect way would be saying something like, well, we sent a communication to 1 million people, 19% of those people opened it, which is 190,000. If 2,400 of those 190,000 convert, it's a 1.3% effective conversion rate. So that's the incorrect way. And that's actually a really common method for trying to figure out the value of sending emails. But the problem is you won't have that type of data for SMS. So if you use the effective conversion rate methodology I show you here the correct way, you compare channel versus channel on an apples to apples basis. You can also do some other really cool things. Imagine if your team says, you know what, we're going to put some money and some effort behind increasing our deliverability. By increasing our deliverability by 2%, it's going to go to 10,000 more people or whatever. And then you just multiply that times your effective conversion rate, and you can see the dollar value that you could expect from your efforts and communicate that to your organization to get budget to do these great things. All right, so now let's move on and take a look at how you would do some forecasting of an effective conversion rate. So I'm going to start with SMS on the left. Okay, this common known statistic that 98% of SMSs are viewed. Then you need to figure out, well, how many people that receive these SMSs will actually pay attention. And so what I'm using here is a click-through rate. So at Twilio, we have a hyperlink shortener that has click tracking built into it. And I was able to evaluate 193 million volumes that were sent with the marketing use case. And we had a 13.58% click-through, or the customers that use our service had 13.58% average click-through rate. So then you get those people to the landing page after they click through, and they need a landing page conversion rate. So I'm using HubSpot's data here. Hopefully you'd have your own data, but I'm using HubSpot's data here. They have a nice report that shows by industry what is a typical landing page conversion rate. And the 1.84% is for retail or e-commerce, and it's actually on the lower end for conversion rates, so this is a nice conservative number to use. So if you multiply those 98% times 13.58% times 1.84%, in this instance, you can expect 0.24% of your SMSs sent for marketing to convert. Now for email, we did a 2023 marketing email benchmarks report. We found that 19% of emails are open that are sent for marketing. They had a 4.48% click-through rate. And then you're gonna have the same landing page conversion rate, okay? Because as soon as you get somebody to a landing page, it's the job of your landing page to make them convert. You multiply those out on email, you could expect a 0.02% effective conversion rate. Okay, so now let's move on and put this effective conversion rate into practice. Well, if we had 1 million marketing subscribers, and remember 27% will subscribe to email only for marketing, but not SMS. Multiply that times the 0.02% for email equals 54 conversions. On SMS, 10% would subscribe to SMS only, but not email. Multiply that times 0.24% equals 240 conversions. The remainder, 630,000 marketing subscribers, will receive SMS and email. So I'm saying they're going to get the higher conversion rate. So you multiply times 0.24%, 1,512 conversions. All right, so now we know how many volumes are going to convert. Then you need to turn it into ROI. Now here's where we're at the final stages here. So turn it into ROI, you need to fill in the benefits and expenses. Now the benefits, the first thing you should do is make sure you're speaking your company's financial language. If your company uses like net profit or gross profit, then you'd want to include that here. So in this example, imagine that your product sells for $200, your gross profit or net profit is 10%, and so your benefit per conversion will be $20. Or on the other hand, maybe your company uses top line revenue. Maybe your product is only $20, or maybe you're selling pizzas as $20 or some other product, and then so you have $20 here. Then for expenses on SMS and email, you want to figure out how much you're paying for every single message that you send. And very importantly, you want to use a fully loaded cost model. You don't want to miss any expenses. If you get charged per SMS sent, if you get charged subscription fees, if you get charged for carrier fees on top of that, if you're paying for a hyperlink shortening solution, whatever it is, make sure you include every single expense, and make sure you do that if you're comparing different providers so you can have an apples to apples comparison. So now you have your benefits. Oh, let me call this out. In this example, I'm using 0.01, so 1 penny for SMS, but look at email. 0.0005 per email sent. Email is way less expensive to send than SMS, by the way. All right, let's move on to calculating our ROI. But first, there's one best practice that I want to cover. And this was from Gartner. They put out this report this year called 3 Techniques to Prove Marketing's Value. And they said, why marketing ROI is not a perfect metric. And it's really simple to take a look at. Look at alternative A versus alternative B and start with the blue box at the bottom. Alternative A has an 83.3% ROI, which is really good. Alternative B's ROI is lower, it's 75%. But by the way, it's really good. Now look at alternative B though as stuff like net profit and volumes attained and revenue. Every single one of those categories is higher in alternative B, even though it has a lower ROI. The reason for this is alternative A, they decrease their costs. So they decrease their cost of the business, have a higher ROI, but they have lower value on these different categories. So the key takeaway here is that when you're doing a financial analysis, you need to make sure you show all the different numbers, all the different results that you expect so that your team can make the best decision in the best interest of your business. All right, with that said, let's take a look at how this shakes out. Let's start with email only in the middle. If you did email only, look at that, 700% ROI, ridiculously huge. 180 volumes converted, $3,000 in benefits. Now, if you use that email and SMS scenario that I explained earlier, then all of a sudden you still have a massive ROI, 366% with 1,806 volumes converted, 36,000 in benefits. By doing it this way, you can do apples to apples comparisons across channels and then also see all the different impacts to your business and make the best decision. All right, so there was a lot there, okay? And now let's move on to notifications. And these are the challenging ones. You know, it's like, how can I figure out how much the value of sending a delayed flight notification is, or how can I figure out a shipping notification value? And there's really two key steps that are the most challenging. The first one is to estimate the percentage that would deliver financial impact of all these things that you send. The second step is to estimate the dollar value of each financial impact. So let's start by giving a flight delayed notification example. And the first thing I want you to pay attention to is a statement at the top where it says, use creativity, internal sources, and respected research to calculate the value of notifications, okay? And so now let's go through some steps. So the first thing you need to do is estimate how often this is important. Many companies really struggle with this. And because they come to me and they say, I'm sending 2 million of these a month. What's the value in it? You know, and what I say is instead of looking at that massive number, it's really hard to put your head around. Think of it a different way. Think of it if you had 100 100 delayed flights. How often would early notification be extremely important to you? How often would it have enabled you to secure childcare or forego the expense of childcare because you knew early enough that your flight was delayed? Or how about enabling you to switch your flight so you can meet some business requirements? Okay. Now here, I'm estimating 5%. I'm saying 5% of passengers, this flight delay notification is going to be extremely important to. I really think that's low, but I'm going to be conservative. All right, so now you need to move on to step B, which is determine the percentage at risk of losing loyalty. And here I say you want to review and cite internal and external resources. And so I did a little bit of research, and I guess it's pretty much commonly known by multiple sources that 25% of consumers have a preferred airline. So those are the consumers that you have at risk of losing their loyalty. You know, that 75%, you don't want to make them mad. You want to give them a good customer experience, but you're not going to lose their loyalty because they aren't loyal. Yeah. Then you need to figure out of those, what percentage are actually willing to switch airlines, to switch their loyalty because they had a bad experience. And so I found some research from Statista. It's really interesting. They go by generation. You can blend your results if you want, but I'm just using Gen Z as an example. And they said 37% of Gen Zers changed their airline loyalty in the past year. So 25% are loyal, 37% are willing to change their loyalty. You multiply that out, I get 9.3% at risk. Then you need to figure out what's the value of these communications. Well, I'm using the customer lifetime value of an airline customer, which turns out some sources say it's around 10 grand. And then you multiply that out. Okay, so 5% times 9.3% times 10,000, I'm getting is $46.25 is the value of notifying all passengers of the flight delay. Okay. And then of course you calculate your costs. Okay, say there's 300 passengers. The last time I was on a delayed flight, I got about 5 notifications. So if you say 5 SMS at 1 cent each, is a $15 total cost. Look at that, you do your math, next thing you know, you have 208% ROI. Now, the key takeaway here is that with this creativity and internal and external resources, you can do this. All right, so now let's give another example, and I'm not going to go into as granular detail here, but let's look at a shipping notification example. So first thing you need to do is estimate how often this is important. And you could start with the way I said earlier, if you received 100 products shipped to your door, how many of those was it extremely important that you knew in advance? So you can make sure and get it off the porch quickly, or make sure you have somebody home, or reschedule delivery. Or I found some other statistics. Did you know that 0.46% of package shipments were stolen in 2023? Or did you know that 50% of online consumers worry about package theft daily? That's from Capital Online Shopping, or Capital One Shopping, by the way. Those are the type of statistics you can do to determine or estimate how often this is important to consumers. Then you need to determine the risks to the business. What about loss of loyalty and future orders? What about support tickets or requests into the support organization? I had one company tell me the number one reason that people call into their support organization is to ask, where is my order? Then you need to calculate the dollars per risk event. So you can use total lifetime value, or the dollars per order, or the internal cost to your support organization. Okay. And then you calculate the results just like we did in the previous example. Again, the key takeaway here is that with some creativity and internal and external sources, you can do this. All right, so that's the end, but I have a few final takeaways for you. The first one says, consider your audience and objective when determining your level of detail. If you're working with a financial analyst in your company, you might need to get exceptionally granular. But if you're working with some other business leaders or peers of yours, they might just want a high level and make sure that you have some underlying data. Okay, consider that before you go into so much detail. The next thing says, start small, and measuring ROI before expanding is a great method. I highly recommend this. The truth is that your numbers is going to be different than your peers' numbers. Your numbers are going to be different than the numbers I just showed right now. But if you start small, you can test it out, prove the ROI, and then ramp up. And the next step says, beware of blending results across lines of business. Just as a simple example, if you have a terrific opportunity for high ROI with marketing, you wouldn't want to stop doing the marketing because of the cost to your support organization. Just do your analysis separate. Let them operate as separate entities from a financial analysis perspective. Now, the 3 items on the right are for what I call to pass the red face test. There's nothing worse than presenting a bunch of numbers and having somebody look at you and just say, you know what? I just don't believe it. Okay. So in all instances, use actual data whenever possible. If you have the clicks and customer lifetime value and conversion rates inside your landing pages, whatever they are, use that data. The next one says, clearly cite assumptions as sources. And then really importantly, be open to changing based upon feedback. If they tell you, you know what, that seems a little high, or I've seen something else, say, okay, let's try that out in my model. And then finally, it says, consider building different models. And the first example I give is high, medium, or low. If you have a model that shows exceptionally high ROI, presenting a high, medium, low opportunity will enable people to be more apt to accept your numbers or consider moving forward. Or I also say, consider making them break even. If you have a situation where the ROI isn't very high, calculate what break even is. And then you can say stuff like, you know what? If we win only 2 customers or retain only 3 customers, it's going to pay for our whole program. That's a nice way to get past that hump. Then, of course, if you have different financial models you use, like payback period, internal rate of return, net present value, whatever it is, make sure you speak your company's financial language. All right, well, there you have it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck with your financial analysis.
Thanks, Bill. And now we'll dive into the dynamic world of customer data orchestration and AI, and how you can apply it to drive contextual experiences. Phil, over to you.